Have you already bought this?
That sounds bad. I've already bought it.
I don't have good news for you. This is a complete fantasy piece. It's a complete fake.
Do you want to win any of these items on your screen? If so, be sure to watch the whole video, leave a like, and comment the hidden message. And with that being said, let's get right into the video.
Pawn Stars is a show where savvy deal makers buy and sell rare, outrageously expensive, and sometimes the pawn shop's misfortune, totally bogus antiques, jewels, and more. In this video, we'll look at 10 times a dodgy deal or mishap has left the pawn shop in either a very sticky situation or facing complete bankruptcy. Make sure you stick around until number 1, where we'll see how the gold and silver pawn shop came just pennies away from bankruptcy and how we may have never gotten the Pawn Stars show at all. 10. Fake Rolexes.
You want to know the difference between these two Rolexes right here? This one's worth $2,500. This one's worth nothing.
Watches and jewelry are the easiest items to spot as fakes, but if you don't know what to look for or what you're doing, you can easily lose a lot of money for yourself or your company. In the early days of the pawn shop, Corey Harrison, grandson of Richard Old Man Harrison, began working in the store at only age 9 back in the 1990s. He had to polish doorknobs, antiques, and glass counters while he slowly learned the art of the deal. Once gaining novice at the age of 18 status, he started working night shifts at the Las Vegas store. Word got around that there was a new kid behind the counter, and the public made sure his naivete was well exploited. Within the first week, Corey pawned or bought a whole 6 fake Rolexes, racking up a net loss of $4,000 for the pawn shop. This sort of money to them now would be no trouble, but back then, this was a big blow to the store, leaving them struggling to make ends meet and making Corey question whether he should be a haggling and sharp pawn man at all. Number 9. Dropped the bass.
What, you got a problem? What is it, a musket?
It's a musketoon.
Does it play a song?
Can you just fire the damn thing already?
Merci beaucoup.
As some may know, Chum Lee, the more lovable and youngest cast member of Pawn Stars, is a bit clumsy and possibly not the brightest. That isn't to say he's any worse at his job, though his coworkers may say differently. It does mean he has a few outstanding moments where one might ask, how and why the hell did he do that? Number 9 isn't a deal gone awry, but it was a moment in which the shop lost a large sum of money. After pawning an expensive bass guitar for $700, Chum Lee, the clerk in question, leaned the prized possession completely out of its case and up against the shelf behind the counter. The bass stayed there for an hour or two, and in classic Chum Lee style, he of course made no effort to keep an eye on it and walked off to do something else around the shop. The bass subsequently fell and broke into 2 pieces. Hoping to hide the mistake, Chum Lee put the bass back in its case, which it probably should have stayed in, and left it like that until the owner returned to pick it up. Once discovering what happened, the owner asked the Pawn Stars to pay a whopping $20,000 to replace the broken item. Surprisingly, Chum Lee never received any warnings or discipline for this blunder, but instead got laughed at for many years after. In some cases, it's better to keep an employee you know is clumsy or dim than go out of your way to hire and train another that could easily be worse. The devil you know is always far better than the devil you don't. Number 8. The Shoeless Joe forgery.
Joe Jackson and Babe Ruth. Do you know how rare it is to find his signature?
No, not at all.
It's the rarest sports signature, period.
Wow.
Shoeless Joe Jackson was an American star outfielder who played Major League Baseball in the early 1900s. He went on to become one of the best baseballers to ever live and was also quite famously illiterate, rarely ever signing his name for fans, only ever just to verify contracts or as gifts to friends of friends. He signed his name so rarely that his signature in books and on cards has been sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars in auctions across the world. When Rick Harrison saw his signature come into the store on the front cover of a book, he was excited, to say the least. Going against all of what he deems important as a pawnbroker, he buys the book for $13,000 without an evaluation or second opinion. The lucky seller walks out with $13,000 in his hand, but what is the shop left with? Once getting it PSA and DNA tested by a registered governing body, a letter arrives into the store cementing what they all feared. It was a complete fake. Old Man was furious, questioning Rick on the entire deal and on his merits as a pawnbroker. Ultimately, the shop was out of $13,000, and all they had was some unremarkable signature and a book they didn't want to show for it. The next question to ask is, whose pocket was it coming out of? Because it sure as hell wasn't coming out of the safe. Number 7, the Dusty Fender.
Hey, Rick, I have a guitar for you.
Okay. Oh, this is your guitar?
Yes.
Okay.
The classic Fender Stratocaster hasn't changed much since its release to the public in 1954. It was one of the first solid-body electric guitars to make a big impact on the market, second to the Fender Telecaster, and has continued to be a household name in the music world ever since. You can imagine if one came into the pawn shop not only in perfect condition, but with some apparent musical history behind it, that our pawn stars would jump at the chance to snap it up. Well, that's exactly what happened. Number 7 is another blunder by the infamous Rick Harrison. Vic Flick, a well-known recording musician in Las Vegas and California, came into the shop sporting a 1961 Fender Stratocaster, saying that he himself used it, as well as other musicians, in the recordings of famous songs from the 60s to the 80s. Rick was starstruck. Growing up seeing Strats used by some of the most famous guitarists in the world, he knew he had to have it. Our seller was looking for a whopping $90K for the guitar, but Rick wasn't biting any of that. The two haggled for some time and settled on a price. Rick, after forking up a whole $55,000, had the guitar fully appraised by an expert and was not happy at the outcome, discovering the real historic value of the instrument was not so impressive and definitely not worth $55K. The guitar was only used in maybe 2 or 3 recordings of anything anyone might consider a famous song. The only real notable of the few is the James Bond theme tune. Unfortunately, the Fender Stratocaster sat on display for many years with the outrageous price tag of $90K. Dust gathered over time, and Rick knew the guitar had to be sold on. It was brought to Julian's auction with a set of other items that had to be sold on. In the end, it sold for $20,000 at the local auction, racking up a huge loss of $35,000. The other items sold at the auction incurred an equally gargantuan loss. It was a bombshell of a day for Rick Harrison, but we'll come back to that in number 5. Number 6, Rick Harrison and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh,
Good to see
little
ya.
bird told me you had some Willy Wonka stuff?
Yes, some props from the original film. Why, are you a fan?
Rick is a big fan of the 1971 American musical fantasy film directed by Mel Stewart and starring Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So much so that he himself could not keep his wallet closed when some of the props from the film wandered through the door. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was a film that performed poorly at the box office. The film was partly funded by Quaker Oats, with a coinciding chocolate bar promotion built heavily into the film's distribution plan. However, the film didn't do very well, and neither did their chocolate bar sales. It wasn't until 5 to 10 years later, after the film was released on VHS, that it gained any traction and instantly became a cult classic. The seller knew exactly what this buyer wanted, and he played Rick like a magic whistle. He came in with a golden egg, an everlasting gobstopper, the original Willy Wonka hat that Gene Wilder himself wore, some prop chocolate Wonka bars, and a golden ticket touting the selling price for the lot as $700,000. Rick was being played well. His love for the movie as a child was overtaking his logical reasoning as a pawnbroker. In the end, Rick purchased the gobstopper and one Wonka bar alone for a massive $105,000. When Rick left with his everlasting gobstopper and one wooden chocolate bar, began researching the auction prices for these cult film props, he discovered something that made the everlasting wonder of this deal fade away. The Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory gobstoppers are sold for, on average, $40,000, and the Wonka bars for a measly $13,500, meaning Rick walked away from this deal down by at least $50,000, and wondering if the man who came through those doors was mistaken about the true value of the items, or if Rick was being played by someone who knew just how much he loved the film. Number 5, a bad day at the auction.
All right, thanks for everybody for coming today. This is what happened. My son bought a motorcycle.
Rick seems to be a recurring subject of some of the worst deals that go down on Pawn Shop. But is it really his naivete or lack of experience, or is it more of just a huge case of bad luck? This was a big day for Rick Harrison at Julian's Las Vegas Antiques auction. He had multiple antiques that had sat in storage or on display for the last couple of years that he was ready to sell on, one such being the $90K Fender Stratocaster previously mentioned in number 7, and also a prized possession of Rick's, a beautiful 1940 Indian 4 pre-war motorbike. Rick hoped to make a profit on all of his items that day, upwards of $200,000. The Indian 4 was a pre-war motorcycle built by the Indian Motorcycle Company from 1928 to 1942. It gained huge popularity as a stylish and powerful motorbike leading up to the Second World War. It had extravagant fenders fitted along with plunger rear suspension in 1940, and its production boomed from that year up to 1942. It wasn't until 1942 that all production ceased due to the ban on any civilian production throughout the US, meaning all bikes before this period are rare and regarded as pre-war relics. Rick was hopeful for his profits on the bike and the guitar, but not every day goes as smoothly as others. Rick Harrison finished his day at the auction with a massive $100,000 loss. A loss of $29,000 on the motorbike and a further $35,000 on the Stratocaster. The whole ordeal stunted profits for the gold and silver pawn shop and left Rick rightly in shock. Number 4, the Willie Mays scam.
It's pretty amazing. Where'd you come across this?
It's a family heirloom. My uncle acquired it in the late 60s, and when he passed away, my aunt just kept good care of it, and about 2.5 years ago, she was nice enough to give it to me.
Old baseball memorabilia is a lucrative business in the antiques and pawn trade. If you can get your hands on the right items, it can make you a lot of money, but that's only if it's the right item. When a seller walked in with a genuine Willie Mays Major League uniform, Corey Harrison and Chumlee were stunned. Willie Mays is ranked second in the world on the list of 100 greatest baseball players, so you can imagine what a big deal this set of matching jersey and pants was. Mays was supposed to be such a successful player that he could catch a 90-mile-per-hour ball behind his back without looking. He was ultimately known as a badass. But then, as Chumlee questions, if Willie Mays was such a badass player, why is this uniform so clean and pristine, lacking scuffs and rips from the sliding and wear of a baseball game? Though the cracks begin to show in the seller's story, he tries to start the bargaining at $45,000 for the set, but Corey isn't convinced just yet. He needs another opinion. A sports memorabilia expert comes in to survey the uniform and confirms it is indeed a Willie Mays uniform, correct sizes, correct stitching, but he isn't sure it was game worn. After a tough haggle, Corey gets the seller down to $31,000. It wasn't a perfect score, but it was something. Unfortunately, what Corey didn't expect was that the uniform would never sell. It sat in the pawn shop for months with an $80,000 price tag and not a single bite from anyone. The uniform had to be brought to auction, where it was sold for almost half of what Corey paid for it. Not only was it an unremarkable and unused piece of sporting memorabilia, but it was widely thought by other experts that it was never even Willie Mays' uniform to begin with, and his name was simply stitched on it a few decades ago. Number 3. Stolen diamonds.
Guy brought in a diamond tiara that belonged to First Lady Ida McKinley.
Pawn shops are very big business, with no exception to the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop on the Las Vegas Strip, and they don't come without stereotypes. As many people believe, pawn shops can be perfect places to get rid of stolen goods. Whether it's motorbikes, jewelry, a pawn shop will take anything, but that, in reality, is not the case. Gold and Silver Pawn, as well as many other pawn stores, have their whole computer system hooked directly up to the police department's computer system. The clerks file every item that comes through the door, and the two institutions work very closely together. However, items can tend to slip through the cracks without a clerk realizing the piece is stolen. That is exactly what happened when a genuine pair of diamond earrings arrived into Rick's hands. A man in a sharp suit was looking to pawn off the earrings. Rick Harrison asked every question in the book. The seller gave every right answer and even had a receipt for the store they were purchased from. Harrison took his word for the legality of the purchase and handed over a whopping $40,000. Days later, a detective showed up. The diamond jewelry was stolen. The poor victim got her diamonds back and the criminal paid the price, but so did Rick Harrison. He was out of the $40K that he spent on them. This was the biggest bust I ever had in the pawn shop, Rick says to this day. Number 2. Pawn Stars gets competitors.
Do you hear that? Batman, we need an expert. Are you available?
Gold and Silver Pawn started its life the same way as any other pawning establishment. Bring in some goods, keep them for a while, and then give them back. Sometimes they buy up items, sometimes they sell off items. No other pawn shop had ever thought to branch out into television. However, at least not the way Pawn Stars did. They tapped into a market that made them a lot of money. Not only did they have the full rights to distribution on the History Channel, as well as rights to any spin-offs, but they also had full rights to merchandising and a growing chain of Pawn Stars-related establishments called Pawn Plazas. Business was very good. Until in 2012, 3 years after Pawn Stars first appeared on air, Cajun Pawn Stars, a southern take on the show, came out. The growth of the original Pawn Stars wasn't stunted immediately, but over the next few years, the viewer base steadily declined. Rick Harrison was forced to close a few of his pawn plazas. Other shows like Hardcore Pawn also gained popularity, and Pawn Stars was facing being lost in the noise of pawn shows. The gold and silver pawn business, started decades ago by Old Man Harrison, inched ever closer to bankruptcy. Their viewers had moved on, and they had to begin relying solely on their pawning again. However, thankfully, between 2017 and 2018, a cult following of Pawn Stars emerged in the form of the hilarious memes related to the show's opening. Some may know it as, "I'm Rick Harrison and this is my pawn shop," followed by some loud noises. The Pawn Stars following grew once again. Viewers returned, and the show has now gone down in reality TV and meme history as the first ever pawn show, and a good one at that. Number 1. Real fake diamonds.
I'm Corey from Pawn Stars. I have 2 diamond rings here. I'm going to show you which one's real and which one's fake and how to tell.
The shop or subsequent show may have never existed at all, however, if Old Man Harrison wasn't able to bring the business to a place where they could branch out into TV. That is exactly what almost happened. In the 1970s and 1980s, the gold and silver pawn shop on the Las Vegas Strip was well known, but far from as big of a company as it is today. Kubrick zirconias were new to the market. They looked like diamonds, they felt like diamonds, but they were just the perfect fakes. So perfect, in fact, that the only way to tell them apart from the real thing is that CZs, as they are called, are overly perfect. They are synthetic diamonds, produced so well that it's their perfection that puts them apart. Old Man Harrison, unfortunately, didn't know this in the 70s when they were released. He bought well over $50,000 worth of diamonds in this time. All of them turned out to be fake, worthless. The store was inches from the hole of bankruptcy, and it was only some smart saving and hard work by the old man which pulled them back from the brink of shutting down entirely and gave us the show that we all know today and the one that will go down in history. Where do you think the cast would be now if they never got to make the show? Would Chumlee be doing 15 in the local penitentiary? Would Rick Harrison be living in a mobile home with the cast of Trailer Park Boys? Tell us about it in the comments. Remember to give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for similar content. See you in the next video.
A simple reminder on how to enter our brand new giveaway. We will be giving away either an iPhone X Max, the new iPad mini, or a MacBook Pro. It's really your choice. So be sure to leave a like, comment the keyword, subscribe, and turn on notifications to enter the giveaway. It's really that simple. Go for it.